Have you ever faced this problem with FT8 where you end up transmitting, you're sending out CQ calls, you're trying to respond to other stations, and you're just not getting any replies back? Well, I want to run through some diagnostic things that you can go through to check your setup to see if you're in that situation, and also some tips that will help you to work more DX and work more stations just in general. So what I've got here open here is my wsjt-x version here. I'm running the latest version 3.0.2, and you can see that I'm receiving some stations here on 15 meters. Now, the first thing that I would normally do is when I'm sitting down to work someone on FT8 is to see if the band is actually open. If you're sending out CQ calls or you're trying to respond to stations, checking that the band is actually open is always a good start. Now, obviously, I can see that there's quite a lot of stuff here on the screen, so I would say yes, the band is actually open to here at the moment. You can see here on the waterfall that there's quite a concentration of stations there. And if I actually turn on the audio, I can hear FT8 stations there in the background, which you probably also heard too. Now, the next thing that I also want to check is to make sure that my timing is correct, because if I am seeing stations like this and I am or maybe you're even not decoding any stations at all, the first thing to check is to make sure that you have your time set up correctly. Now, the particular software that I use is called NetTime, Network Time. It's a free download. You simply just install it. It synchronizes your clock periodically, and then make sure that you're going to not miss any decodes, because we've got here this DT factor here. This is the timing difference between you and everyone else. You can see here that most of these stations are within 0.1. There's the 1.7, so that's 1.7 seconds out. That's still going to decode. There was one there at 1.8 seconds, so it's still going to decode. But if your clock is too far out, so once you've got the timing correct and you know that the band's open, the next thing is receive and transmit audio. You want to make sure that that's correct. Now you can see here that I've got here in this green bar about 60 odd dB while I'm receiving signals. If we actually just hover over that there, you can see there that it says 30 dB is recommended when there's only noise. Green is good, red is when you may get clipping, or yellow when it's too low. So you just need to check your audio level coming in to the computer from your radio. Now, you'll have to adjust this in many different ways. Either if you're using a hardware interface, you might need to turn up the volume, the audio coming out of your radio, or if you can just do it simply in Windows, you can turn up the audio there as well. Now, I've done a video on the setup of audio in particular and some other audio things that you really need to know about. What I'll do is I'll put a link at the end of this video and below in the description so that you can check those out, just to double check that your audio settings are correct. Now, choosing a transmit offset is a key one here. So you can see that I've got these two bars here where we're receiving and transmitting. Now, if I just click on there, you'll see that the green one is now moving around. That is our receive one. So this receive slice here that you could see, that will basically anything that's in that slice will appear here in the RX frequency window here on the right hand side. Now, that doesn't affect the band activity here on the left hand side. That basically decodes everything along here. What this basically does is the RX frequency activity here on the right just filters out everything so that you don't have all of these stations scrolling by and you get a little bit confused and you can't follow along. So what we could do is I can actually just click on, say, this little section here. You could see that there is a station that's quite strong calling CQ, I think, or they're calling pretty often. That station was ZL1BRL in that last slot there, and they're sending a signal report through to this KB6C. If we wait for another one, there we go. KB6C has just said Roger, Roger 73. So I can actually hear both sides of that conversation or both sides of that contact, and they're pretty strong as well here. You can go through here and you can click on all of these signals that you could see. The other thing that you can do is you can double click on a station. Now, when you double click on a station, say this one here calling CQ KB6C, if we double click on that, it will automatically enable the transmit. I've just turned that off real quickly because what I wanted to demonstrate is look, it's moved our green bar over there automatically. Let's just find someone else that's a little bit further down here so I can demonstrate that again. Let's try this station here, VE3ARF. That station's going to be a little bit higher. So if I double click on them, I'll just disable the transmit there for a minute, and it's automatically moved our green bar up to where they are transmitting, or where they are on the waterfall. Now you'll notice when I double clicked on that station, it didn't move my red bar. This is actually fixed at the moment. Now that setting is this one, hold TX frequency. Now I recommend that everyone select this because it makes operating on FT8 a whole lot easier. If you have this unticked, if you go and double click on a station that you want to call, you'll see there that it moves your transmit frequency to theirs. You don't need that. All that will do is it may just lead to congestion. It may lead to more people not being able to decode you if you're calling someone, because if everyone's sort of calling at the same time on the same frequency, it can get quite congested. Whereas if you're over on another frequency calling, you'll still appear in their band activity and you'll still appear in a different color when you call, and you're more likely to be able to get that contact because you're not jumping on and piling on top of everybody else, if that makes sense. Now, generally what I want to do, let me just clear this out. If I want to call CQ, I will find a slot here on the band that is free. So we'll just select somewhere here. Now on Windows, just selecting here on the waterfall will, or left clicking on the waterfall changes your receive frequency. But if you hold down the control key on your keyboard and then click, that will then move your transmit frequency. It also moves your receive frequency, that's fine, but for now that's just a good way of moving around our transmit frequency. So let's just pick this one because there's a nice clear spot here on the waterfall where no one has really called. What I would do is I'd come down here to my CQ, I'd select my CQ VK7HH QE37, and I would enable my transmit and we would start transmitting. Now, if I just hop over quickly to our radio, and you'll see there that as it transmits, we've got 50 watts there coming out. We've got very little ALC on there on the meter, so that's ideal. Again, I've covered this in another video, and our SWR is nice and low. We're transmitting on 15 meters. And you can see that we have already a couple of stations that have come back. So I've actually got CQ first selected here. So what that means is that the first person that responds to my CQ call is what the software will respond to. So VK4LW was the first one to respond. So that's the first one that I've ended up calling here. Now what happens is I've just made that contact. I've got the log set up here, so I can hit OK on that log, and it's now stopped transmitting and we're back into our listening mode. Now I expect this other station, VR2KW, to call back, which they might. Oh no, I've got another one. ZL3TX has called me. So if I now double click on them, you'll notice there again, my green bar moved down to where they were calling me back, and I'm still calling here on my original frequency of, what was that, 1122 hertz. So having the hold TX frequency is really good because it means that this slice is effectively, I guess, yours for the time being. There are some people that may still call you on your frequency, but it's a lot easier to do it if you run sort of this this hold TX frequency option here to split it up so that you don't have these collisions. So there we go. I've just worked ZL3TX again, and he was 1 dB, so that was good, quite strong. I think he gave me a minus 6 there, or quite variable signal. So that's actually a good segue too into the next part, and that's about signal strength. So sometimes you might call a station and they might call you back, and you might call a station and they might not call you back. Now, as you can see, there can be quite a difference in signal strength. So ZL3TX, when he called me, was giving me a -6. I received him at a -5, so that's around about the same signal strength. But then what happened is within 1 or 2 transmission periods, the signal would change by 6 dB on the scale in wsjt-x. So it can vary quite wildly. Sometimes propagation can disappear quite quickly as well. Sometimes it also depends on how much power you're running versus how much power the other station's running, what antenna you've got versus what antenna they've got, how much local noise you've got versus them. So there's all these sorts of different variabilities that can come into it. So just because someone isn't responding to your CQ call, It doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is at your end. It could be a combination of different factors. So it's always good to see, like here, I just called Roger 73 to VE3 ARF, and he is calling me again with a signal report. So obviously he didn't receive my RR73 signal here because the software would have moved into the next step, which was to give me a 7.3. So there's all this sort of variability with FT8 sometimes, just to be aware of it. And when operating, again, antenna propagation, all sorts of different things can come into play. So I just wanted to run through PSK Reporter. Now, PSK Reporter is a very important tool for being able to see how you're getting out, seeing how your signal's going, and also whether if you've got different antennas or you're testing different power levels, how much of a difference it can make. And you can get data that is sent out without even working a station. So in wsjt-x, just under settings here, just one thing that that I recommend people do is going into here and then going into the reporting tab here. Now, under the reporting tab, you'll notice here that I've got the QSO buttons here pop up, and I just need to cancel out of that so I can confirm that QSO. But some people ask, how do you log a QSO? You can tick this button here, prompt me to log a QSO, and you can select all these different settings here to be able to do that. But the one thing that I recommend people do is to turn on enable PSK Reporter spotting, because what this will do is any stations that you hear yourself, you will be able to report it to PSK Reporter and input the data, which will assist yourself and others to be able to see the stations that you're hearing, the stations that are hearing you as well. So just here is the list of signals that I've ended up sending and that have been heard, or stations that have heard me since I've come on. And again, it's only been in the last few minutes. You can see that there's quite a lot of US here. So these are the stations that have heard me. So if I could give out a CQ call, I can go through here and I can get a good indication of everyone that is hearing me on the particular band at the moment. If I go and change this to received by, this will be all of the stations that I have received. So just have a look at this filter here. By the way, pskreporter.info/pskmap.html. That's the link to PSK Reporter. So here I've got the band selected, 15 meters. I can show the signals received by. So this is going to be the signals that I've received. The call sign, put my call sign in, FT8 over the past, we'll have a look at 15 minutes. We'll hit go, and you can see here that it draws on the map, and these are all of the stations that I have heard in the past 15 minutes. Now, these are mostly, I think, CQ calls that I've heard. Stations that are currently in QSO, you'll see that there was quite a few of those that were in wsjt-x that were appearing in the waterfall and also in the band activity list. They won't all show, but these are the ones mainly that that were being received by me. And you can see that you get quite a good idea of where propagation is at the moment. So let's just do another example here. Let's now move this to 20 meters. Now, 20 meters, I'm just going to erase all of that. And I think that 20 meters is going to be a good band that's going to be open. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reopen PSK Reporter here for a minute. If we change this to 20 meters and we go show signals sent by me in the last 15 minutes, you'll see that there are absolutely none here on the band because I haven't been on 20 meters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just do 2 CQ cycles. So I'm just going to enable my, I'm going to select my spare frequency first. And we're putting out about 50 watts or so. And I've already gotten a couple of replies here, a ZL and a YT3PL station. So whilst that's responding to those stations, let's just bring up, so I've only really made one CQ call. I didn't even get the chance to send a second one. There we go. These are all the stations that heard that one CQ call. So I've got, and you can see the timer, this is how long ago they heard it. So again, all in the last minute. So we've got a bit of Australia here, which I'd expect, a bit of New Zealand, but quite a bit of the US and also quite a bit across Europe as well. And you can even zoom right in. You can see exactly whereabouts they are. You can hover over them, and down the bottom left-hand corner there, you'll see some details around the call sign that heard you, their grid square, frequency, and also some other information as well. So this is a very, very handy tool to see real-time propagation and how it's actually affecting your station, how your signals are getting out. So as you can see, PSK Reporter is a very powerful tool to be able to see exactly how your signal is getting out. Now, the next question is, how do you optimize your station for DX in FT8? There are some settings that you should definitely know about, and I cover those over in this video over here.